Blair Mountain, 1921. The largest armed uprising in American history since the Civil War. 10,000 coal miners, red bandanas around their necks, the origin of the word redneck as a badge of honor, rose against the company bosses and their private armies of strike breakers and hired thugs. They fought not for some vague ideological vision, not for corporate tax loopholes or stock buybacks, but for the right to earn an honest wage and not be worked into the grave before their time. For years, the mines had chewed up men like fodder, their lungs filled with dust, their bodies broken before they saw 40. And when they dared to unionize, when they had the audacity to demand dignity, mine owners sent in gunmen with gas bombs. The government has always sided with the money. But those rednecks fought. They fought against all odds because they understood something that we have forgotten, that the working class, unified, is the greatest force in American history. That when the common man stands together, no tyrant, no corporation, no maniacal billionaire can break them. But that was then. You see, the working class built this country, not the bankers, not the speculators, not the politicians with soft hands and softer spines. The schools, the bridges, the cities, every steel beam, every brick, every stretch of highway was laid by men and women who, in return, asked only for enough to raise their families, for a future that looked a little better than the past. And for a while they had it. The New Deal, the post-war boom, the golden age of the American worker. Unions were strong, wages kept pace with productivity, and the middle class swelled into something that looked almost like the American dream. But dreams don't last forever. Not when there's a dollar to be made from waking you up. The ruling class never forgave FDR for making capitalism work for the people, so they set to work. And it started with fear, the fear of communism, the specter of the other, the great distraction that Nixon and Reagan mastered like a magic trick. They told the blue-collar worker that his enemy wasn't the billionaire gutting his pension, it was the black family moving into his neighborhood. That the real problem wasn't the factory closing and moving, it was the immigrants who had nothing to do with it. They convinced the white working class that the real threat to them wasn't men in boardrooms writing off their livelihoods, but the poor, the marginalized, the ones who had even less than them. And so the common man fell for the oldest con in history, the belief that with just a little more patience and sacrifice, they too might be invited into the halls of power. That if they just worked harder, voted the right way, and kept their heads down, they might one day join them at the table instead of begging on the floor. And as they were busy fighting amongst themselves, the charlatans went to work. They gutted unions, demonized collective bargaining, and turned the proud identity of the working man into a dirty word. They deregulated industries, turned pensions into gambling chips, and rewrote the tax code so that the richest paid next to nothing while the middle class carried the burden. Reagan told them that government was the problem, and then he made damn sure that it was. Clinton came in with a smile and a handshake and quietly sold them out just the same. Bush peddled wars and Wall Street bailouts. Obama cleaned up the mess but kept the rigged game intact. And by the time Trump came along, the American worker had been so thoroughly screwed over that they were desperate enough to believe the most blatant lies ever told from a podium. And yet, despite all of this, the spirit of Blair Mountain is not dead. Because while they have spent decades convincing us to accept our own slow death, they have not yet erased the memory of resistance. The teachers who strike in red states, the auto workers demanding fair contracts, the baristas, bartenders, welders, and warehouse employees forming unions against billion-dollar corporations. These are the real resistance, the new generation of fighters who refuse to accept servitude in exchange for a paycheck. Because the truth is, the common man is not powerless. They were not powerless in 1921 when they took up arms against their oppressors, and they are not powerless now. The billionaire class fears them, fears their ability to organize, to rise, to remind them that this country does not belong to the hedge fund managers, private equity vampires. It belongs to the people who actually make it run. And so the time has come to remember that our power is not in waiting for a politician to save us, but in recognizing that no factory runs, no road gets paved, no power plant hums to life without us. That the future belongs not to those who hoard wealth, but to those who build the world with their own bare hands. And we have been lied to, stolen from, tricked, and trampled on for decades. But as history has shown, we are only beaten when we believe we are. And right now, across the country, in union halls and picket lines and conversations around dinner tables, where people are finally seeing through the scam, there is something stirring. Blair Mountain was not the end, it was the beginning, and the fight is not over. Defiance till death.